land is your land.
President Trump are clashing in Berkeley, California. This video.
This land is my land. From California.
This great state of California, one of the most progressive states in America, is on board the political revolution. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. It's Progressive California. It's finally here. The show we've been working on for days and days and days. And it'll be an interesting show tonight. Not exactly what we were planning, but it is a premiere episode of an Uphill Media production, so things always go a little unusual there. My name is Laura Livengood. I will be your host for Progressive California on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. on the regular, along with my lovely co-host and news editor, Joseph Sakata. Joseph, I am reporting from sunny Santa Cruz. And Joseph, where are you coming from?
I'm coming from Riverside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm so glad to have you here. You are our news expert who is going to be pulling together highlighted news of the week that affects California voters. And we will be having a full news segment with Joe a little bit later on in the broadcast. So this is actually the third of the Uphill Media Progressive State shows to launch this past year. We join Progressive Oregon and Progressive Washington, and we are pleased to be completing a nice blue third wall for y'all. Our goal is one day to have progressive shows for all 50 states. Right now, we're just going to see if we can get through California. So anyway, I probably should fess this up right now because of a unexpected change in his travel plans. Our guest, Stephen Jaffe, will not be with us tonight. And I'm sad about that because Stephen really sat down with me last week and talked about what is a progressive roadmap for 2018 for California. And he really helped me clarify a few things. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through a few of those things, and then we'll talk about some news. But first, I want to say hello to everybody who is here. Jay and Joy and Barbara and Metal and John, Sandra, Schultze, Bill. Wow. Holy crap, we've got 25 people watching, John. What am I going to do? John Ellis is our faithful producer behind the scenes, and he's going to remind me if I forget anything. So
I'm here.
So far. So glad you liked the intro. Oh, I should probably call out to Sharon Jones and the is it the Dap Tones? What is the one that wonderful?
The Dap Kings.
The Dap Kings. I love that. And if anybody recognizes that intro, I totally stole it from the beginning of the movie Up in the Air, which is one of my favorite movies. It starts with that whole song with a bunch of great images. And I always thought that was great. And if I had my own show, I'd use it. So hopefully Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings will forgive my liberties in taking that. And the footage of Bernie, I don't know if you recognize that, Californians. That is from the rally in San Francisco the night before the California primaries in June 2016. I was there. It was amazing. I like to tell everyone the story about how I cheered so hard when Bernie came out that I almost threw up. It is true. And it was an amazing night. And it was a little bit of the end of an era. That was the last big rally. That was his last big thank you. Kind of the night before the end of the primaries. So, Joseph, now, how long have you been working in the progressive area, and what's your main interest?
For around 2 years now. I was really inspired by Bernie during the 2016 elections. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of into politics before that point, but Bernie's really what really got me into it. And when the primaries happened and the DNC and the Democratic National Convention happened, and Bernie was saying stuff like, do what you can for the revolution. And I was like, what can I do? Mm-hmm. And what I've done for a lot of my life is make YouTube videos. In the past, I made more non-political YouTube videos about gaming and technology in the past. And I thought, I can maybe do this to maybe help the revolution out. So I started covering political news and progressive issues on a YouTube channel, and I started talking a little bit about some of the progressive candidates running, which incidentally, I made a video about Stephen Jaffe, and the Jaffe campaign happened to notice that, and then after that I started working with campaigns to edit some of their videos and
Great.
try to help them produce things out. So
Great.
kind of finally got here too.
Yeah,
Well,
you
we're glad
volunteer
you,
for us.
we're glad you finally found your way to our corner, and you make a great addition to our team already. I've really appreciated your insights as we've prepared for this. So, what is Progressive California? What are we going to be covering in these shows? All of our progressive shows take a slightly different angle. As you know, this is obviously an Uphill Media is an engagement broadcast. And for those of you who might be new, what does that mean? It means that you, our viewers, are part of the conversation. So whether you are watching live and asking us questions, commenting in chat, or you feed back to us in the comments of the video by throwing out candidates that you want us to look at, programs that you want us to support, issues that you want us to cover. We listen to what you say, both now, after the fact, and as we develop the show going forward. And you'll find that the show will morph to more and more about what our audience is asking for as we go. So please like, share, and comment. This is going to be a little bit of a soft launch, obviously, because we don't have our first guest, but it is no less of a shakedown cruise also to let you know kind of what's coming next. So slide 4, John. We go to a progressive roadmap for 2018. This is what we're going to be looking at. Critical races to watch, mostly in California, but also some of the national ones that have some effect on us. Obviously, top issues for California, and organizations to support. And every time we have a guest and every time we have a show, we're going to focus a little bit on what is that particular guest's vision of what a roadmap to victory is for progressives in 2018. So that is kind of the rough formula here. I think I would like to jump in. I'm going to call the top 3 races that Stephen and I looked at. Joe, I'm also going to come to you after this and see if you want to add any to this list.
So by top 3 races, you mean by in California or in
Yes. Yes, this is our California focused top 3 or top 5 or whatever. I don't need to be pinned to any particular number. In my view, and with Stephen, we thought that the ones to replace Dianne Feinstein in California Senate and Nancy Pelosi in Congressional District 12, which is San Francisco, which is who Stephen is running against, were 2 critical ones that are going to affect beyond just the district and even beyond just the state. Those are two establishment Democrats that we think it's time for someone else to do their job. And so we think those go without saying. Stephen and I were going to talk a little bit more tonight, though, about the San Francisco mayor race. And I think I'm going to wait until I have him on the show because he can really give us some background. If those of you who may not be aware, the mayor in San Francisco, Ed Lee, passed away tragically last month. He is currently there's an interim mayor, London Breed, who is the president of the Board of Supervisors, and she has just announced that she is actually going to run for mayor, and that election is coming up in June, so that's fast. And this is a big deal. This is the mayor that gets elected in June is going to be, that's 10 years for San Francisco. So we want to choose well. And there is also another incumbent, and Jane Kim, who is going to be running as a progressive. She is also on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and she ran for the state senate in the 2016 election. And I actually heard her speak at that same rally with Bernie. And she's very inspiring. So we're going to be talking more about that race with Stephen when we bring him back on. So those are kind of the 3 that we earmarked for tonight. Joseph, do you have a race or 2 that you've got your eye on, particularly in the Southern California area?
Well, I specifically have my eye on, Nancy Pelosi. Well, that was Stephen Jaffe, but I'm currently having my eye on Maxine Waters' seat. because
Ah.
I don't think she's very necessarily progressive.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's one of the most corrupt congresswomen we currently have in office.
And what
And
district is she?
um, I
Or area? She's Los Angeles, right?
40. I think she's Los Angeles.
Okay.
California's 43rd congressional district.
Okay. Great.
And while there aren't any progressive Democrats running against her in this election, there is a Green Party candidate by the name of, I'm probably going to butcher his name, Miguel Zuniga.
Mhm.
I probably butchered his name right there.
Mhm.
But he's a Green Party candidate who's
Sorry,
running
Miguel.
against her.
Mhm.
And I think he's going to get more coverage because I think he's a decent candidate. So I have my eye on that race. I also have another eye on the Angelica Duenas case.
Mhm.
Once again, I'm probably butchering names here. She's running California's 29th district, and
Mhm.
I think she's running as a Green Party candidate as well. But I like her platform a lot.
Okay, excellent. So look for us to be focusing more on those races in coming episodes, but that's the kind of thing we're looking at in terms of races. Now, next slide, issues. So another thing we
Yes,
are
ma'am. Where are we at? Slide what?
slide 6.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Hey,
Sorry.
Dave. By the way, you got a bunch of people from California chiming in here.
Oh, yay. Sorry, I can't
close,
watch chat and host at the same time, but I will try and do better. So David in Cali, yay. Thank you everyone for being here. Again, for those of you, if you are slipping in late, this is a little bit of a soft launch. We are introducing what Progressive California is going to be, what we're going to cover. We've got some news stories to cover a little bit later. But thank you. Thank you for being here.
And Metalhead's in
Yeah.
northeast of LA. I didn't know. Hey, Metal,
Yeah.
you gonna join the crew? Gonna help him out reporting?
He's good there in chat. He keeps everybody in line there. And if you do have any questions, do call him out. I'm not sure how many questions we'll be able to get to today, but if you know the drill, write the word question all in caps, and our faithful wrenches will make sure that we see those.
So, because this is an engagement broadcast, I just want to make sure that either you or Joe will be paying attention to the chat at some point, right?
Okay.
Joe pays attention when I'm talking, and I'll pay attention when Joe's talking. That is our deal.
Teamwork. I love it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I love it. So, in my wonderful conversation with Stephen Jaffe last week, I asked him, what do you think are the top 3 issues for California voters? I had this top 3 thing going. Apologize for that. So structured. We kind of talked about healthcare as being such a hot issue because we've got this SB 562 sitting there, not sitting there. Is it going? Is it not going? Can we get single payer in California or not? Is there a path to get there this year? Is there a way for 562 to be on the ballot in November? I don't know. That's what we want to find out. And in a future episode, I have invited David Hildebrand, who's running for Senate in California, to join me as kind of an expert on that particular bill. He has been watching it before, during, and after its time on the state Senate floor, and we'll be doing a more in-depth report on that in an upcoming episode. Election integrity. This is a huge one. And next week, I have invited Michael Feinstein, who is running as a Green candidate for Secretary of State in California on a very strong election integrity platform. He is going to come on next Sunday, and we are going to focus our broadcast on election integrity and all those issues, because I know this is something near and dear to all of you all. And then affordable housing. That is the third issue that came up when Steve and I were talking. And there was even some legislation just came out in state legislature this week. A new proponent about opening up land that's near public transportation sites. And that was something that I was going to ask Stephen about tonight. So affordable housing is definitely something that we will be developing as a larger show further on. And then finally, not even on this list yet, I just confirmed this week that we've got an upcoming episode with our Silicon Valley rep, Ro Khanna. He is very interested in high tech, very dialed in. I'm going to bring him in and talk to him about tech in elections and net neutrality. This is going to be a few weeks away. We may know more about what's happening with the net neutrality votes and the FEC, et cetera. I thought he'd be an interesting person to talk to us about that aspect of technology and progressives and issues. So those are just a few of the things that we've got planned for upcoming shows. But again, engagement broadcast, please leave us your ideas in the comments of the video. Send us an email, info@uphillmedia.org, if you want to get involved, if you think that someone absolutely needs to come on the show. We've got quite a few Sundays between here and the 2018 elections, and we want to fill those with the things that you want to hear about. So there.
And quickly stepping in,
Please do.
We do have a Twitter account. It's at Prog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also reach out there. If you have a story or something or an issue that we don't think we're covering enough or we just haven't gotten to, I would greatly appreciate it as the news segment guy if you would send me links or if you would share a candidate with us. And I'll be the one mainly maintaining that, and I'll keep my eye on that.
Yes. So it's at Prague, California, our Twitter account. Big thanks to Adriel Hampton, who already owned that, who gave that to us to use for our show. It takes a village. We appreciate Adriel. Oh, and Adriel's another one that I would like to have on the show, actually, talking about campaign strategies, how to use tech and email and all the latest Twitter and social media to promote a campaign on with a progressive flavor. So, Adriel, in case you're watching, I'll call you. What else have we got? Oh, slide 7, John.
I'll go there. You got the entire Prague, Washington crew watching the show, and I just wanted to say we got Courtney hashtag Prague Posse because we got all the Prague shows. It's like, where's that Prague Rock Fest, the Prague Politics Fest?
Yeah, I think hashtag Prague California will work just fine for our hashtag. Thanks, Brian. Do we have one? I think we have one in our lower third.
Yeah, that's what it is. Prague, California. It is.
Right on.
I'm just glad that they're here. Represent. Thank you, guys.
Use it. Make it trend. No, don't make it trend. I'd be frightened if I saw it trending. All right. Next up, organizations to support. This is kind of a third arm of what we're talking about. So we already talked about campaigns. We already talked about issues and, of course, organizations. Progressive Alliance. This is a strong organization that really started by Gail McLaughlin in Richmond. Gail will be a future guest on the show, and she's going to be talking about progressive alliances. And if anybody brings people together, it's Gail. She's fabulous. So she's going to be talking about that. We also have Our Revolution and some amazing Bernie-crats organizations. They kind of have morphed to become one and the same. The San Francisco Bernie-crats in particular, if any of you are out there, high five to you guys because you're awesome. Also, Stephen really wanted me to give a particular shout out to the Democratic Socialists of America. He's been working with them and thinks they are doing some great work. And I think that we all saw the results of the elections in November, where we saw some DSA candidates getting elections. It's possible. Joseph, do you have a thought about that on DSA?
Not too much.
No, you just had a good nod there.
And I just love them. I think they're doing some really great work.
Okay. And of course, we have brand new Congress and Justice Democrats who are finding more and more amazing candidates to vet and to promote across the country, and a lot of them in California. So I think, Joseph, do you feel like you want to move over into some of the stories of the week?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a kind of a roadmap to victory slide, but I kind of like to put that at the end.
Okay.
So why don't you take it away? What are the top things that you came across your news feed this week, and why are they important?
Okay, so this week, of course, we turned into a new year. Happy 2018 to all of you. It's a new year. It's a new show. It's a new host that you don't know very well. And it's also a new California. A new California that has, of course, legalized recreational weed, which is fantastic. And as a Californian, I'm very proud that we have done this. And I think we're taking a huge step towards the right direction here, especially seeing that marijuana is one of the safest drugs out there. You can't overdose on this. Well, you might be able to, but you have to try really, really hard if you wanted to. And it's a shame that the federal government still isn't moving very far on this, and it's a shame that it's still a Scheduled 1 substance, meaning that the federal government views marijuana to be as deadly or around as deadly as heroin, which it absolutely isn't. Once again, you can't overdose on marijuana. Marijuana is one of the safest drugs out there, arguably safer than alcohol. So this was a great decision, and for about the first few days of living in this new progressive California, we enjoyed it. And like every good high, there came a crashing point. And this crashing point came on January 4th, just 4 days into this lovely new progressive new California, just 4 days. And it all came crashing down with, well, the Cookie Elf's slightly racist older brother that the Cookie Elf family doesn't like talking about, or in other words, Jeff Sessions.
Well said.
So Jeff Sessions made a move, let's say, that is highly controversial and, in my opinion, going against what we should be going towards. And I'd like to read a little bit from the LA Times article here, slide 12, John. Okay. The Justice Department move on Thursday plunged California's fledgling recreational pot market into further uncertainty and was met with a bipartisan backlash from lawmakers in states where marijuana is now sold legally to any adult who wants to buy it, well, as long as you're over the age of 21. It is the mission of the Department of Justice to enforce the laws of the United States, Sessions said in a statement, which added that the Obama-era policy that directed federal prosecutors not to target state marijuana businesses undermines the rule of law and the ability of our local, state, tribal, and federal law enforcement partners to carry out this mission. Can we go to slide number 13, John? So during the Obama administration, we got this thing called the Cole Memo, and it was basically this order to the U.S. attorneys to deprioritize prosecution of cases relating to recreational marijuana, or in other words, basically lay back from the states, lay back from the locals. If they want to have legalized recreational marijuana, let them. But now Jeff Sessions is here saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to undo this, and now we're going to hand it over to the U.S. attorneys to decide what to do next, which is bringing mixed reactions. So because at first, these marijuana dispensers in California and Colorado, there was a bit of a panic because it was like, oh no, what's going on? Is Jeff Sessions actually starting to crack down on marijuana again? But then we realized, no, this is Jeff Sessions simply handing it over to the U.S. attorneys to make the decision, meaning that we're going to see mixed results throughout the United States. Some states might have stronger U.S. attorneys who will actually crack down a lot harder on this. Some states might not see that. Some states like California might see these U.S. attorneys saying, hey, we have better things to do with our time than busting these people who just want to get a little bit of high. And something that really makes this even more complex is that only 46 of Trump's nominated U.S. attorneys have been confirmed so far, meaning that, and by the way, there's 93 total U.S. attorneys, meaning that half still haven't been filled out yet and confirmed. So that complicates things a little bit because that means that half of the United States has the U.S. attorneys who are just temporarily taking the place of a U.S. attorney until Trump actually speeds up and starts appointing people. So all this ends up coming down to, what about California? What about this new great California that we suddenly got in 2018? What's going to happen here? Well, nothing really soon. As far as we're aware, nothing is going to really change. There are a few U.S. attorneys in California. There's actually 4 U.S. attorneys in California. And we've been asking them, and they've been kind of giving non-answers where they've been saying, hey, we'll make our decisions accordingly. So this isn't a direct effect on California and legalized recreational marijuana, but it is still concerning to see happen because remember, Jeff Sessions last year kind of made it seem like he was going to back off from the issue. Well, he also made it seem like he wasn't going to do that too. So it was a mixed bag. But the fact that he's unrolling this, while in of itself might not affect us directly, he might go a little further because he has the power and the ability to do this. And this is where I can't stand the hypocrisy that these Republicans like Jeff Sessions have. They like to say, oh, we're for small government. We don't like big government. We're for states' rights. Remember how back during the Obamacare repeals, during one of their attempts anyway, they would use that argument of we're trying to give the powers back to the states. Well, in this case, the states are saying, hey, we want to have recreational marijuana. We voted on this. We're going to regulate it. We're going to tax it. We're going to get some income because of this. It's going to be great. And they're like, no states' rights to you. No, we're going to crack down on this. Here, we're going to undo this thing that was stopping U.S. attorneys from going after you. It's like they don't get it. They're not principled. They don't believe in the whole, we believe in the small government, big government bullshit that they keep on pushing forward. They use it when it suits their needs, and they don't actually care about it. Now, is it that surprising that Jeff Sessions is going back on his word? No. John, slide 14. Jeff Sessions is one of those people who would say good people don't smoke marijuana. He's also one of those people who in the past actually said, quote, I thought those guys, the Ku Klux Klan, were okay until I learned they smoked pot. Now, he was apparently joking, but this guy's saying, oh, the KKK, I thought they were okay until I learned they were doing marijuana. Yeah, like, because that's the one thing that's wrong with the KKK, right? The fact that they're doing marijuana. So, all that having been said, and this is something to be a little bit cautious about. I think a lot of people are being optimistic here, and I think we should be. But we should still be cautious because this guy does have power. And according to federal law, once again, marijuana is still illegal. And federal law beats state law. Unless we're talking about medical marijuana. We're talking about recreational marijuana here. It's slightly different from medical marijuana because medical marijuana, Congress has already passed a law saying that basically limits the federal government from basically meddling with medical marijuana purchases. But this doesn't really apply when it comes to recreational marijuana, or at least not yet. So this is sort of threatening recreational marijuana, but not really, because it's not a direct order from Jeff Sessions. So all that having been said, I am hopeful. I am optimistic. I'm cautious, but optimistic, because I think this is the final pushback we're going to get from these anti-marijuana Jeff Sessions Republicans. This is the final pushback. They're seeing the writing on the wall, basically, and saying, oh, we got to do something. Look, recreational marijuana was legalized in California. It's a booming business. According to the BDS analytics, it's estimating that the sale of cannabis will hit $3.7 billion in 2018 alone.
Wow.
And it's predicting $5.1 billion in 2019. That a $5.1 billion in just 2 years. In this industry that is really just starting to open up and starting to sell marijuana, really. Mm-hmm. So they're starting to see the writing on the wall, and they get it. They get that it's inevitable at this point. So they're pushing that. This is their last stand. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that pretty soon things will just start to collapse. California, with all this money coming into all these marijuana industries, pretty soon we're going to see big weed buying off your politician. Sad state of politics.
Oh, no.
Buying off for politicians, but they'll be buying off for politicians. They'd be buying off the Cory Bookers of the world. And then what will happen? The Cory Bookers of the world, who will be, of course, obeying their corporate overlords, or in other words, big weed, they will listen to big weed, and they will decriminalize weed, they will legalize it, and then they will basically, hopefully, undo the Schedule 1 substance, the category that they put marijuana in. And it'll be legalized, and we'll start seeing these industries start to thrive. More jobs will be made, and it's inevitable. And it's sort of like there's a stack of dominoes, and Jeff Sessions is just going out in front of it saying, no, you can't touch it. No, marijuana bad, no. That being said, though, once again, be cautious, because Jeff Sessions is Attorney General, and he has actual power here. And while this can be a final pushback, there can be a lot of damage done by the final pushback. Do you have any questions?
Cool. No, I think people are agreeing with you on this.
Think about how many politicians would lose their jobs if they actually sought to enforce the federal law here.
Yeah. What do you think, Joseph? Have you heard much about the idea of public banking based on cannabis dollars or anything like that? I've heard rumors of that, and that with that amount of money that can't go through the federal banks, that would be interesting to discuss in a future episode, maybe.
Yeah, I'll look into it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Well, what is your next story? How are you gonna top that?
Story is it's a quick update to what's going on with net neutrality. So we're basically moving on from the story about how the Cookie Elves' racist brother is trying to take away your marijuana to how the Verizon's Terminator is trying to kill your internet. So
nice segue.
So net neutrality. Some of you may be wondering what's happened because a few weeks ago we were all screaming and we were saying no, net neutrality is gone. The FCC made their 3-2 decision of repealing it. By the way, majority of Americans still want net neutrality. I believe 85% was the number that were saying we don't want to get rid of net neutrality, but still Ajay and the FCC still decided to make the decision. I don't know what they're doing. But you might be wondering yourself, wait, what's happened then? Because my internet is still fine. Sure, my ISP may have raised my rates on me. And sure, they said they'd be here at 7 on a Thursday last week, but nothing's really changed. To which I'll say, okay, yeah, nothing has changed yet because this is slow. This isn't like Harry Potter using a spell to repeal net neutrality. It's not the Q from Star Trek snapping his fingers in front of you and suddenly saying, voila, net neutrality has been repealed. This is the FCC. There is actually a process with this that slows things down and actually, fortunately, gives us a little bit of time to fight back and overturn the net neutrality rules before it's too late. We'll overturn the net neutrality repeal before it's too late. So the net neutrality repeal, first of all, for the process to really begin, the FCC has to finalize their net neutrality repeal order, which they did last Thursday. And that was released, and we were talking a little bit about that in the public. And after it's been released as a finalized order, it goes through the Office of Management and Budget, which can spend up to 4 months actually approving this. And that gives us a little bit of time once again, because 4 months. So after the approval from the Office of Management and Budget, the net neutrality repeal goes to the Federal Register to be published. And then upon being published, there is a 60-day waiting period between when it's been published in the Federal Register to when the repeal of net neutrality actually starts to take place. So that gives us a nice few months to actually start fighting back, to start talking to our politicians, start contacting our senators, our congressmen to look into the Congressional Review Act, because that's really the quickest and most efficient way we can actually undo what the FCC decided to do here. But yeah, that's just a quick update to net neutrality. We do have a bit of time. You might be thinking to yourself, yeah, maybe I don't need net neutrality after all, nothing's changed, but don't worry, things will change if we don't do anything, if we let this process just take place on its own. So a quick update from there, and then now to how states are fighting back against net neutrality. So several states are currently fighting against the net neutrality rules by creating their own net neutrality rules within the state. States like Washington, states like New York have actually begun, and they have a bill in their Senate, in their state Senates, in their states Congresses, basically, and they're trying to build their own net neutrality laws there. California, on the other hand, decided to go a slightly different path by creating 2 net neutrality bills. So we have 2 net neutrality bills currently in the state Senate because we're California and we like to outdo other states. So the first bill, John. Okay, so the first bill. Well, there's 2 bills. So the first bill I want to talk about is the one from the Senate President pro tempore, Kevin DeLeon, who has come out with SB 460, his own net neutrality bill. It's a very active net neutrality bill that basically says, hey, net neutrality, it's important. We're going to have this regulation in place within the states. And if you violate it, this law will allow U.S. attorneys, prosecutors to go after you. It's a very direct bill. It's a very straightforward bill, which is most definitely going to be challenged by the FCC. So that's SB 460. John, can we go to slide 18? Okay, so the other bill that's in the California State Senate right now is the one from California State Senator Scott Wiener, and it's SB 822. Now, Scott Wiener's bill is slightly less direct when compared to Kevin DeLeon's, as in it's more of an incentive. And the incentive is this. It's basically, if you don't follow the net neutrality rules, then we won't give you any contracts. The states won't give you any contracts. And the reason why he's doing it in such an indirect way is that his idea is if it gets challenged in court, this would be a little bit easier to go by because technically you're not enforcing net neutrality within the states. You're just simply saying, hey, if you follow net neutrality rules, you get something out of it. You get contracts from the local government. Now, looking slightly at the political aspect of it, this fact that Senator Scott Wiener is doing this isn't necessarily too surprising. He's actually been a very active guy in the state senate. He's a very young state senator, but he's been very active. He's been generally on the right side of a lot of great issues. I don't necessarily know if he's a progressive. I don't know him well enough to say that, but I do know his record does have some pretty good things. Now, Kevin DeLeon, for those of you who don't know, is running against Dianne Feinstein in this year during the midterms. So is this bill from his possibly a way for him to say, hey, Dianne Feinstein doesn't seem to be really for net neutrality, something we'll get to a little later, actually. But I am. Look at me. I have this great bill, this great net neutrality bill. I'm actually fighting for it. Look at the other person, Senator Dianne Feinstein. She doesn't really seem to be fighting for it. I wonder who to vote for in 2018. That he might be playing that game a little bit here as well. Now, with the Senator Scott Wiener's bill, it does have several co-authors from both the state assembly and the state senate, which means that he plans to write it some more because currently his bill doesn't really have that much substance. It's still in its beginning stages. And according to State Senator Scott Wiener himself, he plans to take some time with this because he wants to get this right. And he wants to, basically talk and work together with his other co-authors. So that bill might be in the state senate, but might not be necessarily active for a little bit. Kevin DeLeon's bill, on the other hand, is set to schedule to be discussed this week, I believe, and set to be debated by the end of this month. So it's on a faster track, but it doesn't necessarily have as much support yet. But then, to be fair to both bills, they're both in their very early stages, and it's yet to be seen whether or not they will actually be worked out. Now, earlier I mentioned that these bills will be challenged in court. By that, I mean that the FCC has put in a provision in their final order to repeal net neutrality that basically says that the FCC has the authority to preempt all state or local ordinances that relate to the net neutrality repeal position. And they're claiming that we have the authority to step in if a state wants to have their own net neutrality rules and basically shut it down. Now, both state senators have actually addressed this by simply saying that there isn't really a precedence here. Sure, during the telecommunication era, more often than not, courts would side with the federal government and the FCC. But when it comes to the internet, it's a lot less clear, and they might actually have a chance here. So they're planning to take it. Basically, though, the FCC isn't going to back down from their repeal of net neutrality here. So if either bill passes, or if both passes, and both can pass because both bills don't really contradict each other. So if both bills happen to pass, they're both going to court. And it's basically going to be a situation where the state government is taking on the federal government here. Now, I want to stress that this is still in its early stages, and it's a little too early to bring up our hopes when it comes to these bills. We need to prioritize here. Instead of really focusing too much on this bill, I think right now is the time where we can focus more on overturning the net neutrality repeal at the federal level through something like, say, the Congressional Review Act, and by persuading senators and congressmen who are currently in the federal government to actually take action on this issue while they can. Laurel, I think you have questions.
Dang. You did your homework. Why am I getting an echo?
You know how that goes. So
Yes.
that's a great discussion. Are there any questions from the audience? Because I got some questions.
Yeah. Ask away, John.
Well, so I'm just you're advocating, or you think it's good to be going at it from the federal level. What about just having focusing on ISPs at the local level, because then you can create your own rules. You don't have to deal with the federal level at all, and just make an ISP.
Oh,
And
I'm not again. Like, I'm actually for that as well. But for the time being, the main focus I feel should be is to maintain the net neutrality rules as it is. And in order to do that, I think the fastest way to really maintain what we have going on is through the Congressional Review Act, which is going to be done by the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress. But we should start focusing more on the local ISPs, definitely, whether we have net neutrality or we don't.
So Jeff Pearson is saying the Congressional Review Act would settle this once and for all, and I'm not familiar with it. What kind of power does that give? And I guess my real question is, why do we think our current Congress would care? We've already seen them not give a shit about the status of Donald Trump, not give a shit about racism, not give a shit about Nazis. Why are they going to care about ISPs? They're making money here, even the Dems.
Well, that actually was my next story. So
all right, I'll
you're
shut
getting
up.
a little
You go
ahead of
right
me.
there. Teach on, please.
Okay, so we just covered how the states are fighting back to get back to save net neutrality, basically. Now let's talk about what the Congress and the Senate could do and are shamefully not doing. So the Congressional Review Act, which I've mentioned throughout the show, is basically this process that allows the Senate and the Congress to look at these regulations that are passed by these agencies, like the FCC, and to undo them. It's a very easy step, and it requires a majority vote from the Senate and a majority vote from Congress to get passed. Now, unfortunately, with the Congressional Review Act, after you get a majority in this hypothetical, after we get a majority in the Senate that says let's save net neutrality, and a majority in Congress that says let's save net neutrality, we'll be dealing with the president. Now, my hopes is that if we're able to push these senators and these congressmen into actually supporting the Congressional Review Act in saving net neutrality here, then the president might not push back. Now, in order for us to even get to talking about the president, though, we actually have to start convincing our senators and our congressmen and our congresswomen to actually take action on this issue. Now, fortunately, there are some senators who have actually said, oh, we need save net neutrality, and who are on board with the Congressional Review Act. Senator Ed Merkley, I believe, actually led the charge on this, saying, hey, I have this bill that's basically going to lead us through the Congressional Review Act, and I wonder who else will be supporting me. And there were a few senators, including Bernie Sanders, who said, yeah, this makes sense, let's save net neutrality, and signed on board. And good news to those of us living in California, our Senator Kamala Harris is one of those 29 senators who said, hey, let's help save net neutrality, who is in support of this, who is voting in favor of this. Unfortunately, the bad news is coming to us now. For us Californians, Senator Dianne Feinstein isn't.
Dianne.
Which is ridiculous to me personally, because Senator Dianne Feinstein is up for re-election this year.
Mm-hmm.
And she's up for re-election in one of the most progressive states out there. And yet she's saying, what, she doesn't care? She's saying, no, I'm not going to stay silent on this issue. I'm not going to join in with those 29 senators who are trying to fight for net neutrality. Screw that. I got this election in the bag. I don't. There are multiple candidates who are more progressive than her, who are more openly saying, "Let's save net neutrality." I've already mentioned one, Kevin DeLeon. I don't necessarily think he's a true progressive necessarily, but he is definitely more progressive than Dianne Feinstein. At least Kevin DeLeon is doing something on this issue. He has that state Senate bill right now. And then there are other candidates like Allison Hartson, who is running as a Justice Democrat against Dianne Feinstein. And then there are candidates like David Hildebrand, another progressive candidate who is currently running as Dianne Feinstein, both of whom are on the record saying they want to support net neutrality. And David Hildebrand, giving him credit here, has actually been shaming Dianne Feinstein a little bit by saying, hey, look at who's on this list of senators who aren't supporting the Congressional Review Act right now. So to all Californians, please give Senator Dianne Feinstein a call. Be nice to her, be respectful, ask her how her day's been, I guess. But get her the message that you won't be voting for anyone who won't be supporting net neutrality at this point. That if she plans to just completely weasel through this situation, forget re-election. Just forget it. And by the way, if Dianne Feinstein decides to ignore this and says, no, I'm not going to support it, I'm not going to talk about it, I'm just going to stay silent about this and not do anything about saving net neutrality, I will start out every single one of my coverages of the U.S. Senate race in California with the words, Senator Dianne Feinstein, who doesn't support net neutrality or single payer.
Nice.
You don't want that, Dianne, then, go support this. Go support this. It's easy enough. So the Congressional Review Act, going back to that, if we want to save net neutrality here, we're going to have to get active because, once again, 29 senators, 29 out of the 100 senators we have right now, sign on. I don't know what the rest are doing. Maybe they're taking their time.
Money. Follow the money.
Hey, Joe, question from the audience. What are you hearing about... oh my God, I've lost it. The public broadband in California. Brian wants to know: have you heard any inklings about that?
Not yet. But I'm going to start looking into a little bit more, and I'm hoping that at some point we can get a few guests on who are more of an expert in this on this specific topic, and it's just something to look out for. Yeah. I'm making friends.
Yeah, California is pretty corporate owned in terms of its internet infrastructure right now, is my guess. But that is definitely one of the areas that we are going to be focusing on because tech is such a big part of the California way of life.
So I just want Feinstein. I don't know if you guys know this. Jaffe will know a lot more to talk about with her because she's planning on winning just on name recognition and money, and all the donations she gets from the healthcare industry and from the net industry. And then she's going to retire midterm and anoint a successor. So all she has to do is figure out who that challenger is that's actually going to beat her, woo them, offer them the crown. And that's their game. That's my thought of the game. Joe, what do you think of that?
I think that's probably pretty realistic. I personally don't think she has a chance. My hope is that she doesn't really have a chance because we do have several progressive candidates running right now who aren't taking any corporate cash or running against her.
Right.
I think they have a good chance, and I think a lot of people are starting to get a little tired of Dianne Feinstein. Yes. And there's a little bit of ageism going on with that race, which gives me a little bit of hope. Because some people are saying, we like Dianne Feinstein, but she's too old. Maybe we can look toward fresh blood. And maybe one of those, and a lot of those people I feel might turn to people like Kevin DeLeon, who I'm not necessarily a fan of. I feel like he's taking the same kind of corporate cash that Dianne Feinstein has been taking this entire time. I'd rather replace her with a true progressive who is only accountable to the people and only the people. So my hope is that we'll get rid of Dianne Feinstein. I'm somewhat sure of it. We might end up with Kevin DeLeon if we do. But hopefully, instead of ending up with that situation, we'll hopefully end up with a situation where we'll have a progressive senator representing California for once.
Excellent.
You guys ate up 50 minutes. You got 10 minutes left.
All right, so much for our short show. So here we go. Well, the one last thing that I wanted to cover a bit, thank you so much, Joseph, by the way. That was incredibly awesome, and I adore you. The one thing we want to kind of explore on each show are different ideas about what is the roadmap to victory in 2018. One of the things that Stephen was bemoaning a bit was that a lot of people are already looking ahead to 2020 and kind of thinking, 2018, it's not as important. They're looking ahead to the next presidential election. And that couldn't be more wrong. We have so many House seats and so many elections that are going to be decided this year that we can really, we saw what happened in November. We got a taste of what it could be to have a diverse bunch of new people that are stepping up, winning right and left in races up and down the spectrum, not just the big level ones. And one of the things Stephen said was that the GOP gets it much better than we do about the importance of starting small at the school board level, at your county level, at your city level, and getting involved there. Don't think that you have to wait until you can run for Congress to get involved. this is the year to start looking for those races. And some of you out there might surprise yourself by actually being on a ballot come November. Who knows? I'm just amazed at the pace that things move in the progressive movement, and we don't have any time to waste, obviously. So one of the things that we talked about was, and I think this is one of our overarching themes too, and you'll notice this as we go through our subsequent shows, is that we want to focus on policy over party. This is not a Democrat show. This is not a Green show. This is not an independent show. This is a progressive policy show wherever those policies show up. And we really want to get out of this identity politics thing and really start to look across the spectrum at all the different candidates that we have before us and make our best choices. So that I could not agree with that more. The second area that he saw was really important, and we saw this in the Alabama election with Doug Jones, as we saw that election turn on the mobilization of Black women voters, many of whom who had not voted before, that came out for that election. So in a similar vein, it is going to behoove us, progressives in California, to identify those groups that we haven't reached yet. It's really easy to preach to ourselves. It's really out to all go out together and march on this or all talk together on Facebook. But until we really recognize how important it is to go out and get those rural voters, to get those voters that are disenfranchised, to get the voters who haven't even voted at all in elections, who are completely shut out, they're the ones that we can reach. We're because progressive policies are the ones that are most likely going to benefit them, right? So that was another important aspect of it. And then the last thing is do more than resist. And this is kind of my own personal mantra. I do not like the term resistance. I do not like the idea that all we are here to do is resist the bad things that are happening or the things that we don't like. Yeah, it's fine to acknowledge them. They are there. I'm not saying that they don't exist or that they aren't extremely annoying. But what are you going to do about it? Are you going to run? Are you going to volunteer? Are you going to support? Are you going to join Uphill Media as a volunteer? Are you going to help start a progressive show for your state? Those are the things that we can do. And it's so much better to do than to resist. So those are the kind of the final three roadmap to victory points that we want to cover this week. We're going to be adding to this list as we go on. That said, Joseph, do you have anything further that you want to say to kind of wrap up, just in terms of the show in general and what you want to do?
Well, with my news segment, I would like to not only inform people, but hopefully tell people how to fight back in a way, how you can engage, how we can push certain people into supporting the right things, which is sad, but it's kind of the state of our politics right now. And whenever possible, I want to mention the progressive candidates. Like if I'm gonna do a story on Nancy Pelosi or Dianne Feinstein, I want to make sure that I mention who's running against her, who might be the better option. In the case of Nancy Pelosi, it's Stephen Jaffe, and I hope I can do that through the news segment. Really, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I think we are off to a super good start. I do want to take a small moment here to say that Uphill Media is a nonprofit. These shows are run strictly by volunteers. We have a link in the description, I hope. I can't remember if I put it there, where you can donate to Uphill Media and actually to specifically to the Progressive California show. A few dollars a month if you think this is cool. If you don't have any money, volunteer, be part of the show. Leave us a note in comments. Email us at info@uphillmedia.org. Get us on Twitter at Prog California. Share with your ideas. This is not just us out. This is you in and telling us what you want to hear. And so we are listening, truly. That's what engagement broadcasting is about. Lastly, I think before we sign off, though, I would like to ask John, our faithful producer, if you have any words for the group or encouragement for us or anything in between before we do our final song.
You guys kicked ass. That was a great first show, considering we had issues with booking, and we had to make up a whole segment. You guys covered well. Talk about Trial by Fire, which is a great song to lead into, right? The fire is ours. So,
this is a personal favorite of mine from the primaries. Makana, the fire is ours. I find it for the same reason that I was talking about the last November's elections being inspiring. We got a chance to see what it looks like to see some diverse new candidates winning. And I always liked this particular video because it visualizes, supporting people that we really want to support, fighting the fights that are worth fighting for. And plus, it's cold out there, and we like to see a picture of Makana out there in his T-shirt burning up his poor piano. So with that, I think we are going to sign off. Joseph, thank you. John, thank you. Chat, thank you. Jilly, Jeffrey, Metal, Snorky, Michael, Joy, John. Look at all of you. 45 people watching. Heck, that's impressive.
It's awesome. And you came out with your own outro on the song. I don't have to say anything. You guys nailed this. Great job.
Okay. Well, I just wanted you to give a chance to get your two heads. So anyway, so next week, God willing, we will have Michael Feinstein talking about election integrity. And if not, we'll make something up at the last minute, because turns out that we're actually pretty good at doing that. And thank you all for being here and for being kind and for being patient. Not a single troll. I really appreciate that. And the fire is ours. Makana.
I've been lied to, misled, built about what they said, lifted only to be let down. I've been taken for a ride, given power to decide, only to find out I was wrong. But I learned to tell the ones who fake it from the few who really fit to run. Just follow the money they've been taking, and the truth will shine like the sun. I'm so tired of lies now, babe. Don't wanna compromise, no way. And I feel the burn for someone who can't be bought, to back the man who's fought for the people of America. Agenda, who's the biggest spender, party personality. Soundbite, get it right, entertain him, it's a fight. Pick the one who most looks like me. Don't speak of any real solutions. It's a shock appeal they're looking for. Don't criticize the institution, but I can't take it anymore. Aren't you tired of lies now, baby? It's time for us to rise, no more maybe. And I feel the burn for the truth to come across, to melt away the gloss and reveal the motivations. And you'll feel the burn for integrity to lead, to focus on the needs of the people of America. Somebody's tugging at your heartstrings, saying what you want to hear, but they're just a pawn to the real king, playing upon your fear. The love of power is a puppet string, but can't control the love we bring. The fire is out, the hour is now, the tide is set to turn.